Good morning, Rack Athlete fans. Today we have another podcast, and today we have on a woman called Kim Ingleby. Kim Ingleby has 20 years' experience working in high level sports, performance, and media. She's also done a couple of TED Talks in Bristol about energized performance and adversity. She's helped people with anxiety, stress, nerve problems, eating disorders. She's got various holistical qualifications, sports psychology, personal training, sports therapy, and many others. So, welcome to the show, Kim.
Oh, thank you, Chris. That's a nice welcome, and hello to all your listeners as well.
Thank you. So, how's your day been so far? All good? Prep for the day ahead?
Yeah, all good. I was working in Ireland and then Northumberland, and I've just got back, so it's
Oh,
been a
nice.
busy few days, but good,
Bit,
all
yeah,
good.
good. Bit traveling then, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll start on, obviously, this is the podcast we're going to chat about energized athletic mental performance. So let's get a bit of background about you first so people can understand where you're coming from and how to relate and things like that.
So I set up my business over 20 years ago, and it's energized performance. So the energized bit is about helping anyone really to look after themselves inside, so mentally and physically. And then the performance side is obviously linking it into sport. And that came really when I was at school. I really lacked a lot of confidence and, really didn't sort of like myself at all. And I just had this idea of like, how can I actually help people? And I actually did my PE project at school when I was 15 on my business and
Oh, nice.
looked into like how I could, what qualifications I needed, what I needed to do.
Yeah,
And my dad was like, I don't think that's what you can make a career of. And I was like,
yeah,
well, I'm going to give it a go. And here we are. And
yeah,
like you said, my client base is really varied. I think my youngest client is 12 and my eldest is 86.
yeah,
And I work a lot within sports performance and adventures and extreme challenges for
yeah,
charity.
yeah,
And then a lot with like stress, trauma, anxiety, body dysmorphia, confidence,
yeah,
and they all mesh together.
yeah, of
And my
course.
whole aim is just to help people believe in themselves a bit more to live the life that they sort of wish for.
Yeah, of course. That sounds like it's very, obviously you've got a very holistical approach, excuse me, holistical approach to what you're doing. You're helping various people from your youngest is obviously 12 to 86 is your eldest. So let's dive into um, diversity. Let's start with that one. Okay. I'm
I'll
sure
leap
you've,
straight into that one.
yeah, of course. Why not? Let's start in the deep end, then we'll work our way back down. Okay, so yeah, let's dive into that. And obviously, you've worked with various people probably on that. What is your perspective on adversity and how people can deal with that, whether they're an athlete or they're the general public?
Yeah, it's a big question. Adversity happens to all of us, doesn't it? And
Yeah,
I think that's the maybe the naivety when I was younger was, as long as you're prepared, you can get through everything. And then the more like my life unfolded, the more I realized that to a point that's true, but then lots of curveballs come in that
yeah,
you've never experienced before. And
yeah.
how do you overcome that?
Hmm.
And when I'm talking about adversity with people I work with, it may be like a sports injury or a mental anxiety that's affecting their performance in sport.
Hmm.
It might be not qualifying for Olympics or not completing a challenge. And then it's like the life stuff of like, somebody dies, somebody passes
Yes,
away
yes,
with a terminal illness, chronic stress, anxiety, bullying. And it's
yes.
like, how how can I help that person to navigate what is happening in their life whilst not losing themselves? Or if they do kind of lose them sense of self, how can I help them build themselves sort of back up and understand where their life is to then move forwards? And I think that kind of quote of anything is possible, I've kind of adapted it and gone, not anything is possible, but something is always possible. And
Yeah.
if we can kind of look at that, what is the something,
Hmm.
and day by day, then it will help you to move forwards. So yeah, it's like being brave through adversity.
So what I'm reading from that is having a lot of courage to take on the challenges, really.
Yeah, being brave. I mean, just yeah, encourage and commitment, and also support around you.
Yes.
And there's a lot around like it's good to talk, but actually some people find that very difficult. So how can you have like a small support circle and understand yourself to help
Hmm.
yourself?
Yes.
And like there's quite a few things that have happened for me that I believe then means I'm more empathetic as well as
Yes.
professionally qualified to help people
Yeah.
go, I get it, and this can help you. It will
Yes.
just take you a wee bit of time.
Yeah. So you've got to have that human connection, obviously, as well when you're obviously teaching people and coaching people, 'cause it kind of helps to relate with the situation, right?
Yeah, it's just being, trust
Yeah.
and empathy. You'll know that. And I
Yeah, of
mean,
course.
that's the foundation of life, really,
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
relationships of
Absolutely.
any aspect, whether it's a coach, family, friends, and ultimately the relationship you have with yourself. Is it helpful or is it sabotaging? And I think there's a blend of everything for all of us.
Yes.
And how can you reduce the self-sabotage or the unhelpfulness that you may say to yourself
Mhm.
and become more helpful and more useful
Yeah.
to yourself
Yeah.
so that you can expand on your potential
Hmm.
and the older clients I work with, it's just really inspiring, the ones that still want to learn and still want
Yes.
to evolve and understand what is possible rather than what isn't possible.
Of course. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you work with people that are looking at lifestyle habits, and obviously you've got the sport performance side as well. So let's actually delve deeper into the lifestyle habits part first, and then we'll move on to the sports sort of performance later. So if you can tell me, so for I'll give you an example. Stress is a big thing, right? So I'm sure you've worked with a
Okay.
few clients in lifestyle habits that have had a lot of stress. So what's your take on that, and how do you develop so you're reducing stress?
Oh, Chris, that's a big question. Stress, I mean, like, and the stress affects all of us differently.
Yeah,
And where the optimal point of stress is for anybody is different, and it will
yeah,
probably be different through different points in our life. And
yeah.
when I say the optimal point is like if there's not enough stress in your life, then you may get bored or
Yeah.
depressed or stuck. It's a generalization. And
Hmm.
then if there's too much, you could burn out, you could get adrenal fatigue, you could be running on stressed energy. So
Yeah.
I think the first thing is understanding like how your body responds to stress mentally and physically, like what are the symptoms,
Hmm.
and then helping someone like understand the things that, like if you're always running on that stressed energy, that can work for a period of time but it will have a payoff. And so, I mean, we all know it, but there's the simple things of like, are you getting enough sleep and rest and recovery?
Yeah.
That's one, that's often hard in any
Yeah.
area of life.
Yeah.
Lives are busy.
Hmm.
Do you get time in nature and daylight and your vitamin D? Are you
Yes.
hydrated? And the simple habits in your life that will reduce the impact of like high stress.
Yes.
And I would say when I talk to people, it's like, how's your nervous system? So what are you doing to calm your nervous system?
Hmm.
Because stress obviously like elevates your nervous system.
Yes.
So what are you doing
Yes.
to calm it? And that can really help people to sort of understand, what do I do that is filling up, my body and my
Fill
nervous
the cup
system,
up.
my immune system. Yeah. So what do you receive and what do you give out? And
Yeah.
most people I work with, or everyone I work with is lovely. So they're all givers and they don't really receive much.
Yeah.
So
So yeah.
yeah.
So it's finding that balance really then when you're looking at the stress levels and manage it. Because as you say, like I know myself when I'm working with clients, everyone's individual, the body works differently. They've got certain areas they need to work on, certain areas they're quite stronger in, or so I think it's finding that balance of, as you're saying, if you're a given person, you need to be able to. fill your cup up as well, so
Yeah.
you can essentially keep giving because you filled your own cup up, right?
Yeah. And like I said, I've been out to Ireland, up to Northumberland, back down to Bristol, going back up to Scotland. So I'm really aware, like the next 2 weeks have been giving out and it's a
Yeah.
lot of energy out. And so when you're
Yes.
talking about balance, I think sometimes you know it's out of balance,
Yeah.
but as long as you know it's out of balance, and I sort of always have like key non-negotiables that
Yes.
I'm like, right, I need to make sure I've been outside in nature. I need to
Yes.
have done 10 minutes of stretching and yoga and breath work.
Yeah.
And I know the little things that help me.
Yeah.
And often people think, oh, I need an hour. And as you know, it's what you teach too. It's like the
Yeah.
tiny habits. It's like a minute
Exactly.
here that you
Exactly.
do every day.
Yes.
It's the 1 minute of a deep breath. It's the 1 minute of, oh, what's been good today? And
Yes.
all those little things help to balance us. And then it's
Yes.
having the courage to go, right, I've had 3 weeks of really busy times.
Yeah.
How can I take 2 days to decompress? And
Yes.
then if I was working with an athlete, I'd flip that into like, that's when you're having your rest and recovery,
Yes.
and this is the same, like it's like resistance and then recover.
Yes.
And so there's growth with stress, but there has to be recovery to adapt. And
Exactly.
that's the sort of dance that is different for us all.
Yes.
A question that often comes up is like if I've got lots of kids or I'm caring for somebody who's ill
Hmm.
or I'm on my own and I've got no support system, like,
Hmm.
how do I do it?
Yeah.
And then I return to that. What are your tiny things, your 1 minute things
Yes.
that would make a difference? And I did a talk with the Sports Massage Association with all their therapists.
Yeah.
And I was really curious that there were, like a lot of people on this call, and they all said time outside in daylight. Obviously, we're recording this in January. And
Yeah.
so time outside in daylight was key for them. Less digital screen time that was distracting them,
Yeah.
and drinking enough water. And then when we talked on a little bit, it came to like remembering the compliments and the nice things that people said to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's useful ideas for,
Definitely.
the listeners,
So,
but that's
sounds like
what came out.
ideas. Yeah, definitely. I mean, as you say, like lifestyle habits and any habits, like keep them simple, keep them so you can repeat them again, as well.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
repeatable, simple habits. As I say to my clients as well, small small changes make a bigger impact. I feel.
Well, they really do, and we don't
Yeah.
think they do. Like,
Yeah.
even
Exactly.
I'm sure you and I, like, I'm the same. I'm like, oh, that's not going to make any difference. And then, I like to
You do
practice what I teach,
something.
so I make it happen, and then
Yeah.
it's a habit, and then you'll always do it.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's chat a bit about um so we've talked a bit about stress. So what about anxiety? You've obviously had clients with anxieties and stuff like that. So different parameters, I would say, to stress, because well, maybe not, but you can explain a bit more about that.
Yeah, anxiety's it's a devil. That's what I would say, like for somebody, and
Yeah, yeah,
it's something that I've, learned to navigate, something that, when I was younger, I had a lot of, and it still will come in and
yes.
affect like sport or life or,
Hmm.
even say coming into a podcast, it's like preparing yourself,
Yes,
grounding yourself.
yes, yes.
And I think, first of all, it comes back to understanding yourself and not fighting with, like, I shouldn't feel like this. I
Yeah,
work with a lot of athletes who say, like, I don't want to feel like this or I shouldn't feel like it. And that then it sort of exacerbates the anxiety. And I'd say there's I mean, there's many forms, but the common ones that come to me is one, just general anxiety through social pressure, pressure of expectation of others, and then there's the actual anxiety of like before the event or before the competition. And what
yeah.
I would do with each of those is slightly different.
Okay.
But as an overall, it's like, how does it affect you? And is it like a physical response with your, say, digestion or your immune system or your sleep?
Hmm.
And or is it a mental like drain that it just is like building into unhelpful stories?
Hmm.
And with both of them, I find either like journaling and writing the thoughts down, walking and talking them out loud,
Yeah.
if they're in a place that they feel comfortable to do that.
Hmm.
Um, Meditation, but doing that with, say, stretching. So, like you,
Okay.
and I know that's not, then pure meditation, but
Yeah.
you have the meditation on and you're stretching with the breath
Yeah.
work. And it can be for like 2 or 3 minutes as a pattern break,
Yeah.
listening to music. So, those are all things that I would call pattern breaks. And
Yeah.
then you're really going into the understanding of what's the trigger for the
Hmm.
anxiety. And
Yeah.
often it's a habitual response,
Yeah.
so like it happened when they were younger and then it's like a default. And so you almost need to create a new set of behaviors that you then have to learn as a habit.
Yeah.
For, say, a tennis match, if someone's really anxious specifically before it, and I'm working with two England talent athletes,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
it's like specifically setting them up into the feelings that they want to have, putting them into a hypnotic state where they anchor those feelings with trigger points,
Yeah.
and then having a solution of like how do they pattern break it on the court if it kicks in again. And then, there's huge sort of patterns with it. But if someone is thinking, I get anxious, the best thing is to then say, what would be more helpful? So
Yeah.
it's like going, I am feeling anxious, but what would help me right now?
Yes.
And if nothing comes to mind, it's shifting your state. So, like if you're sitting, go for a walk. If you
Yes.
can't go for a walk, put some music on. And so it's doing something that takes your thoughts out
Yeah.
of that anxious state into a different
Else.
state.
Yeah.
Um,
I get that. I like a lot. I mean, I like a lot, like listen to music regularly. So music's my time as well, just to sit and just as you say, a different state of mind. So yeah,
Music's so powerful,
oh,
so
yeah.
powerful. When I was coming back from being really ill with the Weil's disease and encephalitis,
Hmm.
did a lot of research into like music therapy, but music
Hmm.
on neurology, on your heart rate variance,
Hmm.
stress,
Hmm.
anxiety, everything. And there's someone called John Hopkins who does a lot of different work around like the beats of music and how it can, change how your nervous system is responding. I mean, there's lots
Yeah.
of people who've done research.
Hmm.
And so I'd really encourage people to have playlists of like different ones that they can just go, right, I'm feeling anxious. I'm going to listen
To
to
this one.
that
Yeah.
music. And
Yeah.
and it may be, I have somebody who's, like a bodybuilder, a world strong person,
Hmm.
and they listen to opera. And I just give that as an example
Yeah.
of like, you don't have
Exactly.
to follow like
Yeah.
meditation music. That is like meditative for them.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
yeah, get creative with
Yes.
what work for you.
Yes. It's all a lot to do with biochemistry and obviously in the body as well, right? So how the body responds to certain sounds and stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not
Exactly.
my area, but like,
No.
like drumming and sound
Yeah. Exactly.
baths and linking into the breath work,
Yeah.
the power of sort of the vibrational healing on a cellular
Yeah.
level, but
Yeah.
that's like another a
It's
whole
another whole.
level.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, totally.
Um,
Yeah,
but
but
yeah,
it definitely works. I can assure you that.
yeah.
Yeah. So let's go on to more into the sports psychology side of things now, Kim. So let's chat about your experiences with. I noticed you've worked with Team GB athletes. You've worked with various athletes and you've done a little bit of nutritional therapy as well. Is that right?
Yeah, so I always like to like clarify my qualifications because I really respect the psychologist. So I've done a diploma with that, but my master's was with neurolinguistic programming, hypnotherapy,
Okay.
timeline therapy, trauma therapy, so there's a huge depth of learning there, but I always like to, sort of respect them and put that
Exactly.
clearly out there. I've done
Yes.
nutritional therapy, sports therapy, as we've just said, lifelong learning. There's so much to learn.
Yes.
But I used to travel with the team doing sports therapy, so massage, biomechanics,
Yeah.
rehab. And I did that for 6 years. And every single athlete that was on the couch, I could, most of them I could make a difference, but
Yeah.
they were lying there mentally stuck. And I was
Yes.
like, I've not finished my job
Yeah.
because, physically they're feeling better, but mentally they're
No.
saying all these things. So that's what led me into doing that training. And
Yes.
so that's been my specialism for, oh, like 15 years now.
Okay.
And yeah, they call me the Mind Ninja. And I've worked with, yeah, all sorts. I've been really lucky through literally word of mouth. So
Yeah.
triathlon, charity adventure races, GB synchro, and now I'm doing a lot with motor racing, tennis,
Oh,
equestrian,
nice. Nice.
football. So
That's
a
cool.
broad
Cool.
range, but the concept is similar with everybody.
Okay. So let's focus on the tennis then. So what tennis athletes are you working with or have been working with?
I
Or
can't tell you.
obviously not, but obviously not. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, obviously, what sort of experiences you had with that? Sorry, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Some athletes are happy for me to share their names, but
Yeah, it's fine. It's
obviously
okay.
some are not, and some are under 18. So,
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay. That's okay.
um,
That's fine.
no, no, it's all good.
Uh,
So, I mean, with tennis, it's with any sport that I'm working with, it's always twofold. So, one comes in on like, how can I improve my well-being?
yeah,
So, the coach might come to me and go, they've had this injury and they've got a bit of a block about coming back onto the court and, say having like a gastroc muscle tear or,
yeah,
something like that.
mhm,
Or they've had a really good run of performance. And so they actually feeling the pressure of like, what if I don't perform?
yeah,
And then conversely, they've had a bad, challenging sort of run and they can't get over that block.
yeah,
And sometimes it's just someone who's really curious and is like, how can I improve? Just improve. Because there are techniques that, put you into that state of flow,
yeah,
that you don't need to come with a problem. And
yes,
also I do work with many, beginners into, say, tennis or doing their first like 5K. And I equally love, working with them as well as the high
yeah. Of course,
performance.
of course.
And it's often very similar what people bring. We're all
Yeah,
human. We all have
exactly.
doubts and fears and hopes
Hmm.
and dreams.
Yeah,
And it's literally my job and my privilege to listen to that person and go, what is it that you need? And right, let's work with this and this.
yeah,
And um, it's it's amazing to see the shifts that someone can have if they're ready and they trust the relationship that they have with the
yeah,
person they're working with.
yeah.
And you'll see that with your work and
Yes.
you see it with a teacher or just a good friendship or anything that when the
Hmm.
time is right, and by that I mean either someone's so ready to take the leap
Yeah.
or they're so fed up with their situation,
They go.
like so it's an away from or towards motivation that
Hmm.
you know that they're ready. And then sometimes there's too many other life things going on that you'll just give them support, but not transitional stuff because there's not the space to do
Yeah.
the work.
Yes.
Um, so yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's great insight. A lot of different areas. So yeah, I think the thing that's coming out most is that at the end of the day, we're all human. We've all got different aspirations, goals, dreams, success we want to have, but we're at obviously different stages, whether it's lifestyle or it's athletic or um. So let's chat a bit about your injury rehab stuff you've done before. So what sort of stuff have you experienced through that with anyone that you've worked with?
Oh, everything.
Yeah,
Literally, like anybody I mean, anyone's going to have an injury. So,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, most common comes to my head of like knee injuries,
yeah,
like cruciate
yeah,
ligaments, lateral
yes,
ligaments,
yeah,
meniscus tears, Achilles ruptures.
yeah,
There's shoulders,
yeah,
frozen shoulder,
yeah,
impingement, from
yeah,
tennis, like all of those are really common.
yeah,
I'd say generally, post-pandemic, a lot of back trouble and
yeah,
posture stuff, which you've probably seen too,
yes,
because we're much more, on our computers and our
yeah,
screens.
exactly,
And
exactly.
there's a couple of like really interesting people that I follow around on like just the biomechanics and myofascial work
Hmm.
on. just how our posture is changing, but how we've got so comfortable with comfort that
Yeah.
actually we don't get into a discomfort point. And I don't mean pain, but I
No,
mean,
it's push yourself.
challenging ourselves. Yeah, to
Yeah.
push, to sweat. And it's a fine line because I know
Hmm.
when you're talking to an athletic podcast, people are like, oh, I need to push harder. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like, do you need to push harder or do you need to rest and recover? Like, what do you need? But with the injuries, I still do quite a lot of work within the rehab of it. But what I really like is as I'm doing the rehab, I can then help them mentally.
Yeah.
And so that through the process of physically healing,
Hmm.
we can mentally like enhance it.
Yes.
And often when somebody has an injury, they go into understandably like withdrawal. But I've just been working with an athlete who's hoping to qualify for Paris.
Okay.
And there's so much research and evidence saying, if you get really good mental rehearsal and visualization of your performance and the healing, that you can perform as well by doing that, because you have muscle memory and your body doesn't know
Yes.
the difference between real and imagined. And it's still a concept, even years on with all the training I know, that I struggle to, kind of like understand, but at the same time, the evidence is there.
Yeah.
And so I always say to people, like, just give it a go. Like, if you're
Yeah.
not training for your normal hours, like, why not give it a
Yeah.
go and see what
Yes.
happens?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think injury rehab, illness rehab, grief and trauma recovery rehab is really important. And,
Yeah.
grief can come under many guises, so the normal one would be losing someone that you care about, but also like, an Olympic athlete coming out of an Olympic cycle, a charity runner finishing their marathon and then, not having the marathon. And so there's this like loss of
Yeah.
identity.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that something that I do a lot with
Okay.
now, and it can
Yes.
be really rewarding because it gives them
Yeah.
like, oh, this is now exciting me, like something
Yes.
different.
Yeah. 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 So
So,
I'm sure you've experienced that with like your lifestyle clients and your athletic clients, that sort of stuff.
oh, all the time. And
Yeah.
personally, I've obviously experienced it, and
Yes.
that's why
Exactly. Yeah.
I like every year I like to learn something.
Yeah.
And that last year was what I did. I did grief and trauma therapy,
Okay.
and it was really hard, but
Hmm.
profoundly useful because I realized every single athlete person I work with obviously is affected by that. And
Yes.
it's not a comfortable topic,
No.
particularly in this country, for people to talk about,
No.
but it can often drain your energy
Hmm.
and drain your joy. And so it's
Yes.
like
Yes.
clearing that and then reminding people of like what makes you happy, what brings you joy, when did you last do it? And I think particularly with performance but and life, we're always like, I should do that better, that wasn't right. And I'm
Beat
always
yourself up.
saying to people, yeah, like what was actually good, and it's it's so important to receive that as well as wanting to improve and as well
Yeah.
as knowing you can do more. It's like, what was good today? Because the only thing that you can guarantee is today. And so it's like find those tiny moments, even if they're tiny, and like what do you love, where do you love, who do you love, and bringing that in
Yes.
to anyone is so key. And if I can help someone grow that, when they go out and perform, they perform better because they
Yeah.
have a really good sense of what grounds them,
Yeah.
what their purpose is, what their motivation is, and what they really love. But often we have to work with all the other stuff I've been talking about first
Hmm.
before they'll welcome kind of any of the good, which is kind of interesting but
Yeah.
common.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds quite again. It's about finding that place for yourself, isn't it? Where you can obviously get to that. Okay, today I've done this. This is what went well today, but tomorrow I will try and improve this, this, and this.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I always like say, I'm so work in progress too. I always try and be like really open, really authentic. And
Exactly.
like 10 years ago, I was like, to be a really good coach, I need to be sorted. And then I realized that actually you're never going to be sorted.
No,
Like
you're
this
always
strive for,
you're
yeah,
always progressing. Always.
yeah. Perfection is an illusion. I really believe that.
Exactly. I agree
And
with that. I agree with that. definitely.
Your absolute best game is only your best game in that moment. But bank that memory of like that best game,
Yeah,
and then, move on. But don't move on without banking it.
yeah,
But also know that, like when you get to like your best, something may happen that then you need to change or navigate and
adapt,
yeah, adapt.
adapt. There we go. Yeah, so I'm going to ask you as well, what specifically on your TED Talks that you did. I don't know if a lot of people listening may know what TED Talks are, so quickly just talk over that. And obviously, I'm sure it was about embracing adversity, wasn't it? The first question that came up in the podcast, actually. So
Yeah.
yeah, have a quick chat about that.
So I did so TEDx, so I was his like big TED, which is like the big talks, and then
Yeah,
TEDx is sort of like the underneath, so the league
yeah.
as it were.
Okay, okay,
And I just actually offered to volunteer at the event, and
okay.
then the curator of the event came back to me and said, actually, would you like to pitch a topic to speak about? And I said, no, I'm definitely don't want to talk. That's far too scary. And then I
Yeah,
thought, like I try and practice what I teach, and I was like, take the opportunity. So I put a pitch in. Long story short, I talked about being brave and overcoming adversity. And that was based on I used to do triathlon,
yeah,
uh, GB age group team, and I
yeah.
got really sick by following, I always say, like a rat that was really ill. And it made me really ill, like it took me away from like competing top level at sport to not even being able to leave the house. Not, I couldn't even listen to music or have any stimulus, and it affected my nervous system, my balance, my
Okay.
so when I talk about like change of identity, anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
um, overcoming things, I
Mm-hmm.
really know I can speak from a place of experience.
Yeah.
Um, but that was like over 10 years ago now. So I think I
Mm-hmm.
said to you, like, I feel like there's a talk too, just
Mm-hmm.
based on since then.
Uh-huh.
I had myopericarditis, so inflammation of the heart and a blood clot. We had a
Oh,
family suicide.
oh,
And the combination of all of that, I don't
yeah.
say that for any like, just drama or anything, but
Yeah,
just a
exactly.
context that
Mm-hmm.
those key things were so hard, but they gave me a depth and an empathy and also a
Mm-hmm.
professional level of training to go, I understand, what the body can be affected by, but I also understand that anything isn't always possible, but something always is, and we often forget that.
Mm-hmm.
And so each experience has given me this layer to go, if you feel stuck or you feel like I want to do that thing, but I don't know how, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, let me help you because we've got one
Yeah.
life and we've only got today as a guarantee. So don't wait, like we were talking about the perfect time. There's
Yes.
not a perfect time.
No.
Like there's the messy time, which is now. And,
Yes.
just like start and see what
Exactly.
happens.
Exactly.
If you'll meet new people, doors are open, it might not work out, but you won't
Mm-hmm.
be sat waiting for the perfect time. Something will
Yeah.
have changed
Yeah.
and something will then happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up, to be honest. That's a great point to start thinking about finishing the podcast. So, just another quick question, Kim. Have you written any books or anything like that? Have you got books coming out, or is it something you're thinking about?
That's a great question because I did a talk last week in Ireland, and I said it's a
Yeah.
leap year this year, and
Yeah, it is.
what would be your leap, your brave leap? And
Mm-hmm.
someone turned it back on me and said, "What's yours?" And I
Yeah.
said, "Well, I've always said that I think I'd like to write a proper book."
Yeah.
Um, a few years ago, I wrote a little book, so 52 Ways to Feel Good, and it's literally got
Okay.
4 lines a page. You
Okay.
open it, I give the profit to charity, and
Okay.
it's had its own like legs, as it were, and it
Yeah.
seems to really help everyone, anybody age, have it in a kit bag, downstairs loo, upstairs loo,
Yeah.
like wherever in
Exactly.
your car,
Yeah.
like open it up. So that's been my like little book, and I like
Okay.
to just give it out to people. I'll
Yeah.
send you a copy.
Oh, great.
Um, but I
Okay.
feel like writing some form of bigger book, weaving together everything we've talked about, hopefully
Yeah.
would be useful. So if your
Yeah.
listeners think it would, that would be great as an accountability piece.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I'd love to know their leaps as well, so that we can
Yeah.
like support them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Definitely. What I'll usually do is I put a question out on the my platforms on to see after the episode what people think. So see if we get some responses from that.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
Okay, Kim, thank you for your time today. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and we'll speak to you soon again.
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Chris, and everyone listening.
Okay, folks, that's another episode of the Racket Athlete Podcast, and we'll speak to you soon.